Hi everyone and welcome back to another tutorial. Today we're gonna do this beautiful dreamy place. So let's first open a circle, tap to edit mode and fill the circle. And then we're gonna select this outer edge and extrude it down. And then E to extrude it and right click and scale it up a bit. And again extrude it down and again extrude it and scale it. And then we can just extrude it down. And what we can do next is add a bevel modifier. So search for bevel and let's make it smaller. And 2 segments is enough. And then we can also add a subdivision by pressing Ctrl and 2. Or you can go up here and just search it. And we can shade it auto smooth. And let's also make it a bit bigger. So let's go to edit mode, select everything, and we're gonna scale it just on the X and Y axis. So you can press S and Shift and Z and make it a little bit bigger. And now we can do these pillars here. So let's select a circle again and make it smaller. And we can go to 7 and place it. And now we're gonna just extrude it and scale it. So just extrude it up like this. And now we can extrude it inwards, so just E and right click to let it go and S to scale it inwards like this, and then E again. And what we can do next, fill it by pressing F, and let's bevel it by Ctrl and B and press C so it doesn't clip through, and we can make it round like this. And now we can go to face select and select this face and delete it. And let's select these edges again by pressing Alt and click it. And let's extrude it up. And again, extrude it in. And so on. And we can select all these here and make it a bit bigger. And let's extrude it again and scale it inwards, and let's just extrude it up by E and Z. You can make it as high as you want, so I think this is fine. And what we can do next is again a bevel modifier, and let's make it very tiny by 0.001 and 2 segments. And if you can see your bevel, you have to open geometry and uncheck clamp overlap, and then you can see it. And next we're gonna add a subdivision by pressing Ctrl and 2 and auto smooth. And let's also apply this part here to the top. So what we can do is select your pillar, go to edit mode and Ctrl and R to add a loop cut in the middle. And then Shift and S to place the cursor to the selected. And then we can press our period and go to 3D cursor. What you can do is go up here and select your 3D cursor as the pivot point. And then we can go to X-ray mode and box select this one here. Shift D, SZ -1 and then enter. And then select everything and merge by distance by just pressing M and by distance. And what we can do next is copy it and move it around. Shift S and cursor to world origin. And then select your pillar and right click, set origin to 3D cursor. So now the origin is in the middle and we can move it around. So go to 7 and we can go to X-ray mode to see it better. And we can duplicate it by Shift D and just rotate it by R. And we can select both of them and just duplicate them and move it over. So now we have our pillars here. So for the bed, just open a cube. And let's scale it down and also on the Z-axis and move it up. And let's select this top face and just move it down. And also this face here and make it longer. So next we will add a subdivision. So Ctrl and 2. And now we have the subdivision and we can go to edit mode and make a couple of loop cuts. So let's make one here. And let's bevel it. Just like this. And bring it to the edges and also in the middle and to the edges. shade it smooth, and we can make another loop cut here. So let's select this face here and also these ones. And extrude it upwards. And let's make another loop cut here. And let's do these blankets now, so we can add a plane and move it up. Let's scale it down. And change your pivot point again to the median point. You can make your blanket as big as you want. I think something like this is good. And what we can do next is move to your physics tabs and choose cloth, and also choose your bed and choose collision. Select your collision object, go to friction and choose 10. And let's select this blanket again, and we have to subdivide it first. So let's select everything and subdivide. And let's subdivide it by maybe 50 times. And then we have this timeline down here and we can just play it. So let's click play and see what we get. So our blanket looks like this, and it looks a little bit boring. And here is also a little bit too short, so we can change that. So let's go back and we can select this edge and make it bigger. So E and Y and a couple of more loop cuts. And what we can do next is let's enable our proportional editing. You can go up here or press O on your keyboard, and we can select this edge here and just extrude it like this. And also don't forget to make some loop cuts here. So let's select some edges and just move them around. Someone here, maybe also someone here, one here, and also one here, and one here. Just some variations so we can have something more interesting. And now we can play it again, so let's play it. And it looks like this. And as you can see, it just moves down. So let's select the bed again, and we have to increase the friction. I think a friction of 20 is good, so the blanket doesn't fall off. So it looks like this. And what we also have to do is select your blanket, and let's go down here to collisions and check self collision. And if it doesn't really work, you can decrease the self collision on the blanket. So mine is set to 0.01, and then we can just play it. So our blanket looks something like this. And as you can see, it goes to the ground too, so we have to make a collision too. So select the ground and collision, and let's play it again. And as you can see, it still goes through, so we have to change that. So the object collision is set to 0.015 and the self collision is set to 0.003. And one mistake I did is that the face orientation was not the right way, so this was turned red. If you go up here, you can see the face orientation and check it. And here we see everything is blue, so as it should be. And if you see the red color, it means it is inside and the blue is outside. So if this collision object is red, then it won't work, so the blanket will just go through and shouldn't happen. So if you have this issue, just select your object and go to edit mode, select everything and press Shift and N. This should be blue. And if it doesn't change the color, you have to check inside, so it should look like this. And if you're happy with how your blanket looks, we can move on. So we can add a solidify, and you can also shade it smooth. And I think we have to increase the self collision so it is not too narrow by 0.005. And let's play it again. As you can see, the blanket is not on the ground here, so it's kind of floating. So we can fix this issue by going to your collision object and scroll down, and then you can see the soft body and cloth and the thickness here. So the thickness outer, and you just have to decrease it all the way. So we have 0.001, and then it is not floating anymore. And once we have our blanket, we can add a solidify modifier. Something like this, 0.01 is enough. And then we can add a subdivision by pressing Ctrl and 2. And then it looks much better like a blanket. And let's do the pillows now. So let's select a plane and move it up. And let's make it smaller. And let's subdivide it by 10 times. Let's select everything and extrude it just a tiny bit upwards. Go to select and select edges. And then we can press S, Z and 0. So we have a tiny bit of air in the inside. Go to your physics again and add a cloth again. And let's go down to the pressure and check it and set it to 5. And what we have to do next is add a subdivision, so by pressing Ctrl and 2 and place it above the cloth and change the mass to 0.01. And we also have to change the object collision and put it to 0.001. And let's go back and play it. And now we can see we have a nice looking pillow and we can shade it smooth. And now we can go to the modifiers and apply the cloth modifier and the subdivision. And let's go to 7 and place it onto your bed until you have something that you like. And we can just copy it and move it over on the x-axis. And let's rotate it so it looks a bit different. And once you are happy with your result, we can move on. So let's make the ground. So Shift A and search for landscape. So multifractal looks good, I think. And scale it up and scale it on the z-axis. And let's rotate it. And just move it around until you find something you like. And just you can see, here we can see the edge, so we can scale it more up. And scale it on the z-axis. And we can weight paint it. So we can weight paint the areas where we want the grass to grow, so maybe here. And once we have that, we can move on to the particle system. And we're gonna change that to hair. And go down here and to your vertex group and select your density group again. And we're gonna change the length to 0.2. And the segments to 3 is enough. And here we can see our grass. And go to your render and select B-spline. And let's go to the children and select interpolated. And the render can be 600. Just type in as much as your PC can handle. And we can go down here to the roughness and go to uniform and change it to 0.003. The endpoint can be set to 0.004 and the random can be set to 0.005. And we have some random grass. And let's go to the hair shape and change the root to 0.05 and the tip to 0.03. And that's it for the grass material, and we can do the water. So let's select a plane and move it up and scale it up, and let's move it down a bit. You can choose as much water as you like, and we should also change the weight paint again. So let's go back. We can see here's the water, and the weight paint shouldn't be there, and the grass shouldn't be on the water, so we can change the weight to 0 and just paint this area here. And now we can also make some plants on the water. So we can open our asset browser and go to plants. And what I chose here was the clovers. And we can choose 1 and 2 to have more variations. And select both and press M and move it to a new collection and name it clover. And now we can select our plane again and we can weight paint it too. So let's weight paint it. Move your weight up again and let's paint this area here. And we should subdivide it first, so let's do that and subdivide. Go down here and type in 50. I think this should be enough. And let's go back and paint this area here. And we can move the camera out a bit more. So let's select the camera and change your orientation to normal. And check this arrow here. And let's move it a bit more down so we can see the water more. And let's select our water again. And let's go to particle system again and add a new one by pressing plus and change it to hair. And let's go to render and render collection and choose your clover collection. And also go down here and again the density, your group, and also select pick random. And let's make them bigger. And also scale random. As you can see, it is a bit too much, but I will change the weight paint. So let's make some variations by maybe putting it to 0.6 and paint it like this. And let's go back and let's change some settings. So we can move the number down to maybe something like 500 or maybe to 200. And I think this looks good. And let's move on to the boat. So the boat I have just from Blender Kit. You can just download it. So just type in boat. And you can come up here and select 3 first. I will choose this wooden boat here. And let's drag it in the scene. And we can select the empty of the boat and scale it on the x-axis, so S and X, to make it more narrow. And I think this looks already pretty good. And we can also rotate it on the z-axis. So something like this is good. And you can maybe move it a bit more to the edge here. So something like this. And what you can also do is you can add a ceiling here. So we can add a circle and move it up. And go to edit mode and scale it up a bit. Fill it. And let's extrude it a bit. And move it up. And we can shade it auto smooth. And also some subdivision and a bevel. And move the bevel above the subdivision. And let's make it smaller by 0.001 and 2 segments. And let's move on to the materials. So go down here and change it to shader editor. Go up here and change it to material preview so we can see the materials. And let's select the steps first, and we can also change it here. Press new and type in plaster. And don't forget to enable your node wrangler by edit and preferences and search the add-on node wrangler and then just check it. And now we can go here to our node and click Ctrl Shift and T, and then the window pops up and you can select your material by clicking Ctrl, select your roughness, your normal map, your color map and displacement, and click OK. And then we have our materials. And let's select our steps and go to edit mode, select everything, U unwrap and Q projection. And it is pretty bumpy as you can see, so we're gonna change that. And we also should apply the modifiers, so let's apply the bevel by pressing Ctrl and A, the subdivision as well. And let's again U unwrap and Q projection, and then it should look much better. Let's go down to the displacement and change it to 0.01, or you can make it even smaller, but I think this should be fine. And let's change the scale to maybe something like 5. And let's also select our pillars and add the plaster material. And let's also go to edge select and select this edge by holding Alt and click it, and X and dissolve edges. And now we can make some loop cuts. Like this should be enough. And go to edit mode again, select everything, U unwrap and Q projection. And it looks like this. And select the pillars. And then select the last one with the material. And Ctrl L and link materials. And now we can just delete the other ones and move your pivot point again to the 3D cursor. And let's go to X-ray mode and 7 and just copy it by Shift D and rotate it. And let's select both and Shift D and move them over. And we can rotate it a bit. And let's select the bed sheet and go to new and let's name it sheet. And we're gonna select a bump and connect it to the normal and a color ramp and connect the color to the height. And let's also add a noise texture, connect the vector to the vector and a texture coordinate, and plug the coordinate to the vector. And let's make the scale to 400, move this more here and make it gray, and also this one. And we can set the height to 0.1, this should be enough. And we can move the detail up to 6. And we can also move the roughness pretty up high. And let's just select a color that you like. Here I choose something like a greenish color. And let's put the saturation way down so it is not too bright. And we can choose the same material for the pillows. So select it and select both by holding Shift, and also select the bed and the sheet. And Ctrl L and link materials. And now we can choose the water and make a water material. So press new and let's delete the principled and add a glass shader. And let's connect it to the surface and add a transparent. And connect it to the volume and a bump. Connect it to the normal, a noise texture, and connect the color to the height. And now we can scale it way up and the strength is too high, so we can change the distance to 0.1. And I think the strength is also way too high, so we can just move it down. And we can also change the roughness a bit more down. And now we can do the ground material. So select your landscape and press new and name it ground. And we can also name it grass, so it is the ground and the grass as well. So we can add a color ramp and plug the color into the base color. And then we're gonna add a noise texture and plug the color into the factor and add another one in the middle. And let's change the color to something that you like. So I choose something like pink color. So move the value and don't make it too saturated, so maybe just a little bit. And then we can change the other ones as well to maybe something more saturated. And this one just a tiny bit. And let's change the scale from the noise to something like 30,000. And the detail to 9. And the roughness way up. And here we can change the roughness to 0.3. And let's go back to our particle system. And here you can change the material, it is already set, so this should be fine. And let's add a sun. So Shift A and sun. And let's move it up. And don't forget to save your file because it can crash because of the many particles we have here. So let's go to render view and see how it looks. So let's rotate the sun and change the pivot point again to immediate point. And move it up. And let's change the brightness to 3. Press Ctrl B and we have this frame only. And now we have to add a HDRI, so let's do that. And we also forgot to add a color to the water, so let's do that also. Go to color and make it something like blue. And let's move the saturation just a tiny bit, so it looks more natural. And let's go to the world settings and select this dot and change it to environment texture. And open your HDRI. And once you have your HDRI, you can press Ctrl and T. And let's also change the bow texture. So let's go back to object and we can just disconnect the color and we can change the strength to something like 0.9. And let's see how it looks. So as you can see, it is pretty bright. So we can change the strength to something like 0.3. And now we can move the HDRI around. So we can see how it looks like, and I think this part looks the best. So let's rotate it on the Z-axis. And we cannot really see the sky, so we have to change that. So let's rotate it on the Y-axis and on the X-axis. You have to move the X-axis on the opposite direction, so something like this. Maybe something like this is fine. And if you want, you can change the color. So if you add a hue and saturation node, just move it in and you can also change the saturation and also the hue if you want something like purple or something like this. But now it looks very green. So let's change it back. I think I will leave it to 0.4. I think this looks pretty cool. And now we have to change the sun a bit more. So as you can see, it is a little bit too dark, so we can make it maybe to 4. Or even 5. And let's make some color to the sun. So whatever you like, I think something red looks good. So maybe something like this. And I think we can set the sun pretty high, something like 8 maybe is good, or 9. And what I think looks better is the angle. So here you can see the shadows pretty sharp, and we can change the angle by just increasing it a bit. And as you can see, it gets more soft. And we can also rotate it a bit more until you find something that you like. And we can also change the color of the clovers. So let's go back to object and select your clover. And let's go back to our asset browser. And if we go to plant, we have our meadow flower. And I think the color and the texture is just nice. That's why I always choose it. So just drag it in your scene and click this little dot here. And then you can change it to the wasteland meadow flower. Also the other one. Something like this, and we can also change the colors a bit more. So I think for my taste the saturation is a bit too high, so we can change that. And for the render settings, I set it to cycles and GPU compute. And for the samples, you can choose something very low, so maybe something like 50, because it takes a while to render because of all these hairs. So I think 50 should be enough. And denoise, and you can turn off the light tree and check this clock. And go down here to performance and check all this and persistent data, and I have set mine to AGX and very high contrast, so I think it looks very nice. And then you can press F12 to render it, or go up here and render image. And once your render is finished, you can go to Pixel R, so we can turn the vibrance up, and we can turn the contrast a little bit more up, and put the smooth all the way up. And you can increase the glamour a little bit if you like, and maybe some dehaze. And let's compare it. And that's it for the tutorial. I hope you could learn something new, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. And thanks for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye!